It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here as always. Oh, got to check. I got to check the morning futures here. I haven't checked in about 45 minutes or so. As we check right now, the Dow futures plus up 201 points, 0.52%. S&P futures up 43. That's 0.83%. NASDAQ up 176. That's up 0.98%. So again, the Japanese or the Tokyo Stock Exchange went up big time, like 10.2%. They lost 12.4% yesterday, but recovered most of that. As what will happen the rest of the day, who knows? All depending on what might affect it. I don't know if any economic numbers are coming out today. I don't believe that they are. But whether Harris picking a VP will have any bearing on it, I guess we shall see. But you're not seeing the bounce back in the futures that would make up even close to the huge losses that were taken in the last 2 days.
Nope. And it goes back to how much the market believes the data that shows a possible recession. And if any new data adds to that, as you mentioned, the political landscape, the geopolitical landscape also with Iran and what's going to happen there with their proxies and also the possibility of an attack on Israel. We do know about the attack on American interests in Iraq. So now, how much of that is going to affect the market and how long-lived might any of that be? I think really the big question for the market is about the recession and whether or not it's happening or we're headed for it. And if the market believes that, then, I wouldn't expect a recovery from Friday and Monday to happen in one day.
And I think you need to understand, I think not you, but everybody needs to understand that the Japanese downturn was different than what happened in the United States. Mm-hmm. There were different. I'm not saying that the Japanese fall didn't scare off American investors yesterday, because clearly it did, wondering what was going on. But as the Wall Street Journal pointed out, their plunge was the result of the long-needed shift in monetary policy. The Bank of Japan raised its interest rate target to 0.25% last week and laid out a timetable for tapering its quantitative easing program. They're still in quantitative easing that we were in for the longest time. Very loose money supply. The yen had dropped tremendously. It stabilized, the yen did yesterday a little bit, but they've had massive problems. And again, what does it come to? You and I go back to 2012. Was it when Romney stating that the Japanese that the Chinese were manipulating their economy?
Yeah.
And we said, who isn't?
Right.
We're doing the same damn thing.
Right.
Oh, well, we may be doing different things, but we're doing the same thing as to trying to manipulate the economy or manipulate the dollar. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've got all governments attempting to do it. Why do you think we're in the situation that we're in right now? We're in because of, you've got a significant portion of the government, mostly Democrats, that believe, because if you look at really the last few years, the economy has been really driven a lot by government spending or government giving loads of money to people, all borrowed money from future generations, and now the interest rate is costing us $1 trillion. Nobody's talking about COVID relief anymore, are we?
Nope.
How great COVID relief was. We forget about that because what took the place of it? Inflation. And so the loose monetary policy that we had for the longest time here, how many times did Eric and I say, we're going to pay for those low interest rates that they had out there because they were keeping them necessarily low?
There was no way there wasn't going to be a snap back from that behavior long term. At some point, something has to change. Because once you get into the mindset, and we did as a nation, that, all right, free money or cheap money, low interest rates, is here to stay. And we can do this forever. All right. Now you have to get into the mindset of where's the growth and what happens when you keep spending like you're spending, because that same mindset has people believing, well, you can also spend at the same time and spend like never before. And, of course, that wasn't the case, even in the wake of a pandemic. You just can't do that because it's going to be long-term pain, and here we are.
I just want to read the last couple of sentences of the Wall Street Journal lead editorial today. It isn't obvious what economic boost rate cuts would offer, since the market is already anticipating them and has eased financial conditions. A 50 basis point emergency cut, as some are calling for, would look panicky and might spur more selling. The clamor for the Fed, this is the thing where you just shake your head. The clamor for the Fed to save the day reflects that it's the only game in town. Congress is gridlocked on economic policy, except for more spending and bad tax and trade ideas. Since the 2008 financial panic, the U.S. economy has been sustained for the most part by government spending and cheap money aimed at supporting consumers and asset prices. But cheap money is never free, and it can't last forever. It builds distortions and excesses that are unsustainable and must eventually be addressed. That's what the Fed had to do by raising rates to arrest inflation, and part of that bill is now coming due. Government spending is also restrained by rising debt, even as low-income consumers have spent down their pandemic savings. The current economic slowdown is one result. So when you just see that there, but their line, the cheap money is never free. Nothing is. If government attempts to manipulate the economy, however they do it, there's going to be some type of backlash.
Yep.
There always is.
Yep. There's no free ride.
And when I had to read the clamor for the Fed to save the day reflects that it's the only game in town. Congress isn't going to do anything. Congress is going to do everything they can to make it worse. So we've got a Fed there, and the Fed, your job is to somehow figure out before disaster strikes whether to raise or lower interest rates based on what will avert disaster, because Congress is causing a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like,
and the vicious cycle continues.
Yep. I like this one, though. Government spending is also restrained by rising debt. Is it? Has it been?
No.
Is that a fact?
No.
Because from what I know, I haven't seen any cut in any budget items at all because of debt. We're just taking the debt and making more debt with the interest rate on the interest on the debt is simply being borrowed from future generations.
Yeah.
They're not, from what I know, if I'm wrong, somebody let me know. We haven't taken $1 trillion in spending, or let me put it this way, $600 billion in spending because of the increase in interest over the last 18 months. We haven't cut $600 billion from the budget, have we?
No.
Now, unless they say in the future it's going to restrain spending. Now that the Democrats are in power, it's not.
Not in the near future.
Well, we know what they wanted to do already. How many of those bills were defeated by the Republicans with just a couple of votes?
Yeah. Yeah, again, right now, there is, with the exception of a handful of us, relatively speaking, we don't have any, there is no outrage over the national debt to the point that we need to curtail spending. We brought you the bogus, the bogus survey What was it, 95% overall?
95% of people, according to the poll, said they would vote for the party that has a plan to reduce the deficit over the party that did not. And both you and I called BS on that one.
Garbage. That's garbage.
Sure, I mean, it's like...
If you're that pollster...
We're going back to everybody doing LSD again. Only find people on acid to interview.
Right.
To poll here.
Otherwise, you're the pollster and you read the results of that poll and you go, okay, we just spent a lot of money and time for nothing.
Whatever party, let's say whatever party, even though if the Republican Party, but I'll try to be fair here. Whatever party came out with a plan to reduce and balance the budget and put their entire plan as to the cuts and tax increases that they would put in would lose the election in November if they did so.
Yeah. Yeah, get out there and make that your platform.
Unless you do what Paul Ryan did and extend it out even further. We have a plan to balance the budget in 1,000 years.
I was going to say, you can't do 30 years. It has to be way over 100. You can't do it.
It can't be 100. We're going to balance it in 100 in 1,000 years.
Right.
So what we're going to do is really the majority of the cuts will be in the back end, year 900 or more.
Yeah. Right. That's when we'll get serious.
We saw that yesterday. We're like, come on.
When we're coming back to the planet from Mars to get our, the last few things. After that, then we're really gonna tighten the belt.
But if, like I said, if that's true, then that simply means that the people have BS themselves. Oh yeah, I'd vote for the people that would. Because a lot of those people are saying, well, okay, we get rid of the deficit by taxing the rich 100% of what they have.
Yeah, or Keynesian economics, or both, or
right.
Yeah.
Throw the Keynesian economics in there.
Right.
Well, if we borrow $10 trillion more, the Keynesian economics multiplier will make it where we will.
We'll get 1,000. I don't even know what the multiples are on Keynesian economics anymore. Because with in today's standards,
that was a Robert Kennedy before the Bear story thing that, well, we need to take money away from defense and we need to put it into other things like more social programs, and that will increase productivity and therefore create more wealth. Now, that was before the Bear story.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Kennedy, we have a question about a bear. Could you call us back?
No, but seriously, that's what some of the suggestions would be, because that was Kennedy was talking about, that if you spend government money correctly, it will build great efficiencies, and it doesn't.
No.
There are rare things that you can do, and a lot of times those things are done because you need eminent domain to do it. Big airports, right?
Yeah.
Big airports, interstate highway systems, whatever, that does create efficiencies. Mm-hmm. But once that efficiency is in, you have to maintain it, and that's the cost of doing business to create that efficiency. But the impact of that efficiency would be really in the first 20 years.
Yeah.
Where you would see it. But the fact is, government programs, welfare programs, do not create a tremendous amount of efficiency. I just realized I have to report something here that I forgot about. That I bookmarked over the weekend.
Okay.
And we'll get to it here probably following the bottom of the hour. But it's on the let me get it right here. The entire universal basic income.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you see that from Reason Magazine?
Right.
Bad news for universal basic income. Reason Magazine is a libertarian magazine. Researchers found that giving people $1,000 every month for 3 years resulted in decreased productivity and earnings and more leisure time.
I'm shocked.
Well, we figured that out. You know why? Because your opinion? No, because we observe economics. That's the only thing that could happen. Human beings respond to incentive and disincentive in certain ways.
Money for nothing.
Money for nothing, the pathology of dependency.
Right.
We'll get to that story coming up because it's really interesting. But but 95% of people would vote for the party that came up with the plan to reduce the debt or balance the budget.
Yeah, you're doing acid.
Well,
95% are doing acid.
Okay, we're going to have to do something with Social Security. You're out of office.
Yeah. The moment you bring it up.
Well, you know why? Because what they'd say is simply stop foreign policy or foreign aid, and stop the waste.
Thinking that would actually make a dent.
Because that's what Americans believe. We've done the polling on that
Yep.
one. The majority of Americans believe, both Republican and Democrat, if you get rid of foreign aid and you stop wasteful spending, you can balance the budget.
Yep. Nope.
You can't.
Nope. Not even close.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Next week, the big cotton story could be the effects on the southeastern crop from Tropical Storm Debbie and those rains, but that happened after this past week's rating period. And the news from that period?
The further declining conditions in Texas, where it has been hot and rather dry the last couple of weeks.
And USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says the crop in Texas is certainly showing it.
2 weeks ago, Texas 40% good to excellent on the cotton, down to 40 a week ago, 32% this week. Meanwhile, very poor to poor ratings for cotton in Texas jumping from 25% 2 weeks ago to 31% last week, now to 40%.
The problems in Texas serving to bring down the ratings nationally, with only 45% of the nation's cotton crop rated good to excellent, 27% rated poor to very poor. As to what the rains from Debbie will do to cotton in the southeast.
So we'll talk about that next week.
Next week, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, that study on the universal basic income we'll have coming up following the bottom of the hour. I did watch, even if it was taped delayed and only highlights of on YouTube yesterday, the first thing on the Olympics. Watched the first, my only gold medal that I saw.
Yeah.
Which was Scotty Scheffler in golf.
All right.
He won the gold medal. And I did stay because it was only like a 5-minute video showing the shots that he made to come back and win the golf tournament, the Olympic golf tournament. And then they played the Star Spangled Banner. And he did fine until the end, and he started crying. He was wiping his eyes with his arm back. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I did see some of the Olympics.
I saw the clip the other day on the men's 100 meter. So I saw the photo finish thing. But I did think to myself...
Swimming or running?
Running.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the thought came to my mind, I want to see men's walking. That needs...
They do that?
But minimum age of 50. Come on. You can do breakdancing. We can do that.
Ow. That would be me.
Exactly.
Ow.
On our website, RedEyeRadioShow.com. Show info with stations, podcasts, and more. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. And when the show's over, a few minutes after, you can listen to it all over again.
And a third time later.
And a third time, and a fourth time, and a fifth time, and a sixth time. Yes. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
To get it through your head. No. All right, so universal basic income. Remember when Andrew Yang ran?
Oh, yeah.
Is anybody talking about, I wonder if Harris is going to come out with a universal basic income plan.
Before the election, that's a good question. I don't know, because I do expect them to float something in that arena, something of, we need to give you something. And I don't know what it's going to be, because you got to be careful, because things are so tight right now. You got to be careful what you're promoting and how much it's going to cost. But if she doesn't have to talk to the media, she doesn't have to ask questions about or answer questions. How are you going to pay for it and things like that?
Right. Just promote it.
Right.
Well, it's not going to be college because they've been there, done that.
Right. And they're hoping Biden will take care of all that before he's done.
And Republicans already jumped the gun on child tax credit, so they can't go there.
Right. Yeah.
So where do they go? $1 million to every conservative talk show host a year to quit.
Only those that work overnights.
But you notice that to quit.
Oh.
So they have no opposition. Their major opposition goes away.
So I can't do this?
But this was the largest study into real-world consequences of giving people an extra $1,000 per month, no strings attached. And so now they did the study on it and found that those individuals generally worked less, earned less, and engaged in more leisure time activities, which you would figure.
Yeah.
That's what economics tells you.
Right.
That's what people do. It's a result that seems to undercut some of the arguments for universal basic income, which advocates say would help lower and middle-class Americans become more productive. See, that was the point. This was the Keynesian economics point about universal basic income. If you give $1,000 a month to a family, then that will make it so they can get child care and they can work more hours.
Right.
That the investment of $1,000 a month actually would, through productivity of that family, which means earning power, be the payback.
Right.
Andrew Yang, the businessman and one-time Democratic presidential candidate who popularized the idea during his 2020 primary campaign, believed that $1,000 monthly would enable all Americans to pay their bills, educate themselves, start businesses, be more creative, stay healthy, relocate for work, spend time with their children, take care of loved ones, and have a real stake in the future. Now, a real stake in the future means you would be able to participate in capitalism more.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, it sounds great, but it's not what most people do, according to a working paper published this month. The 5 researchers who published the paper tracked 1,000 people in Illinois and Texas over 3 years who were given $1,000 monthly gifts from a nonprofit that funded the study. The average household income, so the nonprofit that gave the money out did the study also. The average household income for the study participants was about $29,000 in 2019. So the monthly payments amounted to a 40% increase in their income relative to a control group of 2,000 people who received just $50 per month. The participants in the universal basic income group were less productive and no more likely to pursue better jobs or start businesses. They also reported no significant effects on investments in human capital due to the monthly payments. Participants receiving the $1,000 monthly payments saw their income, not including the $1,000 monthly payments, but their income from the other side, what they actually earn, drop $1,500 per year due to a 2 percentage point decrease in labor market participation and the fact that participants worked about 1.3 hours less per week than members of the control group. You can think of total household income, excluding the transfers, as falling by more than 20 cents for every dollar received, wrote Eva Vivalt, the University of Toronto economist who co-authored the study, in a post on X. That is a pretty substantial effect. But if those people are working less, the important question to ask is how they spent the extra time. Time that was effectively purchased by the transfer payments. Participants in the study generally did not use that extra time to seek new or better jobs. There was no clear indication that the participants in the study were more likely to take the risk of starting a new business, though the researcher points out that there was a significant uptick in precursors, which means, I don't know what that exactly means. You're not actually starting the new business, but you thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, the largest increases were in the categories that researchers termed social and solo leisure activities. Some advocates for universal basic income might argue that the study shows participants were better off despite the decline in working hours and earnings. Indeed, maybe that's the whole point. While decreased labor market participation is generally characterized negatively, policymakers should take into account the fact that recipients have demonstrated by their own choices that time away from work is something they prize highly, the researchers note in the paper's conclusion. If you give someone $1,000 a month so they have more flexibility to live as they choose, there's nothing wrong with the fact that most people will choose leisure over harder work. So free time is good, and guaranteed income recipients use some of the money to free up time, argued Damon Jones, a professor at the University of Chicago School of Public Policy. The results are bad if you want low-income people to be doing other things with their time. For example, working.
For example, being productive.
Being productive, right. Of course, this is a commentary, I believe, from Reason Magazine. Of course, if the money being used to fund the UBI program was simply falling from the sky, policymakers would have no reason to care about things like labor market effects and potential declines in productivity. If a program like this is costless, then the only goal is to see as many individuals self-actualize as much as possible. One person wants to learn new skills or start a business, great. Others want to play video games all day, awesome. In reality, however, the UBI program, Universal Basic Income, is not costless, and policymakers decided whether to implement one must decide if the benefits will be worth the high price tag. Yang's proposal for a national universal basic income would be estimated to cost $2.8 trillion annually. That's why a study like this matters and why it's so potentially damaging to the case for universal basic income, a welfare program, which is ultimately what this is, that encourages people to work less and earn less, is not successful public policy. Because that's how Andrew Yang promoted it. The whole thing is you become more productive.
Well, and that's it. And the answer is no, you actually don't. And what's the result of that in terms of when you talk about a $2.7 trillion per year price tag? Well, then revenue to the Treasury is going to go down when we are less productive overall. It's going to drop dramatically.
Right. But as they say, though, it's interesting because when we called them on this, the $1,000 is supposed to make you more self-sufficient.
Right.
It's like, well, but you're giving people $12,000 a year to become more self-sufficient.
Right.
You're really not, because you're giving them $12,000 more a year. They're not self-sufficient if you're giving them that money.
Exactly.
But in the beginning, we always knew. We said, well, it's not going to make families more productive because that was the thing. Well, no, families will use it. One of the things I didn't mention here, they'll use it for daycare. So therefore, both the mother and the father can get out there and work.
Or go drop the kids off and come back and take the day off.
Or, like Peg Bundy, eat bonbons and watch Oprah.
Exactly.
Okay, that was back in the 80s and 90s. I understand Oprah doesn't do the daily. Watch The View.
You could watch Oprah on YouTube.
Okay, watch Oprah on YouTube. But again, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect economic sense. It's the way people respond to incentive. If you give them money and they know it's guaranteed, well, then it means, okay, I don't need to look for something else because I have this.
Right.
And I know it from my life. Biggest motivator in my life. Fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I know it wouldn't work and wouldn't make me more productive because I know what made me the most productive. Fear.
Right.
And no one that I was going to fall back on, knowing that was not an option to fall back on anybody else. That was it. That's what made me productive. Fear.
Right.
And if that fear is gone because you have guaranteed basic income, I know for me, not now, but when I was younger, it would not have incentivized me more to get work if I had $12,000 extra that was given to me each and every month that came from the government, and I at that point was making $29,000.
Well, you look at that and then apply it to what the mindset would eventually be, and we'd be a lot like Europe, parts of Europe. You get a month off every year, and you also take a 4-hour and 5-hour lunch. There's just the massive drop in productivity would be devastating to the world economy, not just the U.S. economy. The price tag would be far beyond $2.7 trillion a year, because it would be devastating if you took a society and then just made them, turned them into a bunch of people who just thought, well, no, this is the way to do it now. I had a European friend that told me, oh, I loved my time living in southern France. I loved it. Everything shut down for hours every day just for lunch. And you stayed at the same table at the restaurant, he said, for that, 3-hour lunch. We talked to John Taffer. The thing is, you turn those tables over for a restaurant to be successful. They got to turn those tables over every so often, whether it's lunch or dinner. And you got to be productive.
But you know what I love about this job? There's no forced lunch I have to take.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't sit for 3 hours.
And then you go back for a couple of hours.
And go back. No, I was always, even when I worked at the bank, we had to take the lunch, but I didn't want them many days.
I hated lunches.
Because it was like you get a full hour, 12 to 1, and then you get out at 5. Well, I get out at 4.
Yep.
If I just work all the way through.
Right.
Well, it's too tough. I'm on the phone.
Exactly.
I'll grab something to eat when I'm on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But for me to take that break, I always hated lunches. When I was a machinist, I hated it because we got the same thing. You have an hour lunch.
Ugh.
The union rules give you an hour lunch.
That makes the day so much longer.
But I don't want those union rules. I don't
Right.
want that hour lunch.
Nope.
I just want to work through and get out early. 866-98 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So now we have an official race. Here we go. Harris supposed to pick her VP running mate today. Probably either Minnesota Governor Walz or Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania governor. There, we'll see.
Yeah. We'll learn here in a matter of hours. It will be sometime this morning when it will come out. So, and I'm guessing there will be a leak. There will be lots of tells as to who's going to be on the road with her because they're going to start their campaign today.
And now Dow futures up 91, S&P 17 points.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.